starting with 1 million luck points. Chapter 471, Shocked Again. When Chris went out, he had told the others that he was going out to kill mutated beasts. At this moment, he didn't understand why the other party would send him a message. Could it be that there was something important? Without any hesitation, Chris pressed the answer button and couldn't help but smile. "Paul, what happened?" Paul's expression was somewhat nervous as he said directly, "Chris, let me tell you something. Joe Howe entered the Heaven Tower for the 4th time today. He's challenging the Heaven Tower again." Hearing this, Chris was immediately shocked. He could not help but say, didn't he just break through a few days ago and obtain 1.3 points? Why is he challenging the tower again? Could it be that this brat has broken through? "This am really not sure," Paul said gloomily. "Logically speaking, that shouldn't be the case. How can he break through 2 to 3 times a month? That's ridiculous." Chris was very speechless. "To be honest, I really do hope that that's not the case. But in fact, Joe Howe is very likely to break through. Actually, I meant to tell you that he caused an uproar this time. Many people went to look at the points rankings. Even a few teachers went to look, and basically everyone was interested in Joe Howe's challenge. After all, it's very rare for us to see someone challenge the Heaven Tower 3 times a month. I think his goal this time is to get into the top 100. Paul couldn't help but say. "Top 100? Hee, that's impossible. Back then, I spent a year and a half trying to get to the top 100. Even if he's talented, he only cultivated for less than a month. If he can really get to the top 100, then we also won't have to take revenge." Chris shook his head in disbelief. What a joke! What kind of place was the Heaven Tower? Did he think that clearing the levels was so easy? It had to be known that every advancement was a huge challenge. Some people even prepared for 2 months just to increase their score by 0.2 points. In just a few days, Joe Howe had challenged the Heaven Tower. Again. Chris simply did not believe it. Christ, if only you were here. We could have seen it together. Paul took a deep breath and couldn't help it. Keep paying attention to the rankings. I want to see what this Joe Howe is capable of, Chris said indignantly. At the same time, Joe Howe began to kill the mutated beasts in the virtual space. In this place, Joe Howe could barely depend on his cultivation. He was mainly relying on his physical strength and speed. In other words, he had brought his physique in from the outside. However, his cultivation was only fixed at the Grandmaster level. He could still use his cultivation techniques. However, the cultivation techniques would not have the same impact. Joe Howe held a long saber in his hand and began to kill these mutated beasts. Although he was unable to use his full cultivation, Joe Howe had worked hard during this period of time. Therefore, he was determined to get this 1.5 points today. In just a few minutes, he had killed a total of 80 mutated beasts. He was as light as a swallow and had high senses. My speed has indeed increased. And this Heaven Tower is really impressive. The changes of my body in the outside world were actually brought into this virtual world. Impressive, impressive. Joe Howe smiled. At this moment, he had already used his full strength to kill all 150 of them. He sat on the ground and panted heavily. Congratulations, student Joe Howe. You have succeeded. Your points have been adjusted to 1.5. After this voice sounded, Joe Howe immediately heaved a sigh of relief and was very smug. The moment Joe Howe succeeded, the points ranking outside changed. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them and were incomparably shocked. At this moment, Chris had already finished eating. He looked at the communication device and waited for the news. At this moment, Paul's message arrived. Without saying a word, he picked up. How is it? Has Joe Howe's ranking changed? On the other end of the phone, Paul's voice was filled with shock and fear as he said directly, it had changed. His ranking is now at 150. After saying this, Chris was immediately dumbfounded. It had only been a month and Zhou Hao had already reached 150. It seemed that it would probably take him more than a year to break through to the top 100. In fact, he might even be able to get into the top 50 in a year. Damn, how is Zhou Hao so freaking powerful? Chris and Paul were very depressed. This brat improved too quickly. They could already feel the full pressure. Although it's shocking, it's still fine. After all, he's still outside the top 100. Even if he has extraordinary talent, he won't be able to do anything to us. At most, we just have to avoid provoking him in the future. Chris took a deep breath. Paul could only think so, but at this moment, Paul was suddenly frightened. Chris, bad news. What's wrong? Chris was stunned for a moment. Zhou Hao's ranking had already changed. What else could happen? He's not coming out of the Heaven Tower. After saying this, Chris's head buzzed. What? Does he still want to continue challenging the Heaven Tower? Chris's heart raced. What was this person trying to do? It was not only him. Everyone was the same. They looked at the green light that lit up again in the Heaven Tower challenge space and saw that Zhou Hao's name was still in the Heaven Tower challenge space. Everyone was dumbfounded. Basically, it meant that Zhou Hao wanted to continue challenging. Is he crazy? Is this Zhou Hao really going to enter the top 100 today? Heavens, what happened today will definitely be recorded in the history books of the Battle God Battalion. They were all incomparably excited. Zhou Hao naturally did not know about this. Even if he did not care. At this moment, Zhou Hao smiled when he saw that he had succeeded. He also knew that his ranking must have broken through to 150. Since they have already been shocked once, will they be immune to the shock the second time? With that said, Zhou Hao stood up. I want to continue challenging. Student Zhou Hao, what's the level of the challenge? Zhou Hao smiled. 0.3. As soon as Zhou Hao finished speaking, the system immediately scattered a strange aura. Zhou Hao felt his body relax. He looked down and saw that all the injuries and fatigue on his body had disappeared. That aura just now had condensed a new body for him. This system really has no loopholes at all. Not bad. Zhou Hao was very satisfied, and the system continued. Student Zhou Hao has accepted the challenge for 1.8 points. Kill 180 mutated beasts in 10 minutes. After this voice finished speaking, the 180 mutated beasts immediately appeared. Zhou Hao looked at these mutated beasts and smiled, feeling very satisfied. Bring it on. With that said, Zhou Hao held his saber and rushed forward with a cold expression and excitement. Chapter 472, Admiration. At this moment, everyone outside was shocked. They looked at the rankings and the virtual space in the Heaven Tower in disbelief. Zhou Hao continues to challenge this. At the same time, the points ranking also changed instantly. It jumped from more than 150 to 120. Everyone was shocked when they saw this. Paul, who was on the phone, also said to Chris with a trembling voice, 112-120. What? Chris immediately exclaimed. 120th place was actually nothing to anyone. However, for a newbie who had just entered the Battle God Battalion, 120th place was simply a fantasy. Looks like I can't afford to offend this Zhou Hao. After a long time, Chris said directly. At the same time, this matter also alarmed Chen Yan. When Zhou Hao first entered the Heaven Tower, she had already arrived and was paying attention to the points rankings. When she saw Zhou Hao reach 150, her expression was still calm. However, when she saw that Zhou Hao's number had directly increased to 120, even this beautiful woman's mouth widened without caring about her image. This newbie reached 120 in just a month? This is something a newbie can only achieve in a year. Is this a freaking first-grade supernatural expert? How is this possible? Our battle god battalion has had such a genius before, but there were less than 10 of them. These 10 or so people were all peak-level geniuses. They all broke through to the Heaven Realm and became super strong experts with 12th grade Heaven Realm cultivation. At this moment, a foreign martial artist exclaimed. This newbie is called Zhou Hao. His speed, strength, and technique are all very outstanding. No, I have to tell my family about this. At this moment, many people could no longer sit still. They were beginning to prepare to convince Zhou Hao to join their organizations. Chen Yan was very happy to see this. She had always been stingy with her disciples. She had suffered a bad fate when she was young. Back then, the mutated beasts attacked the city and she lost her parents as well as her home. All alone, she was left to die in the ruins. It was only when a Heaven Realm expert from the Battle God Battalion saw her that he decided to send her to the Welfare Institute. However, when she was tested for her talent, the other party realized that her talent was really shocking and thus took her to join the Battle God Battalion. For so many years, she had cultivated diligently. She originally thought that her life would be blessed from then on. However, just as she reached the supernatural level, her Heaven Realm master was killed by a mutated beast on a mission. During that period of time, she was really in pain. Fortunately, she and her master's son experienced the difficulties together. The two of them had also grown up together and developed feelings for each other. In the end, they got married. After that, she lived a happy life for a while. However, good times did not last long. Her husband had actually died during a mission. From then on, Chen Yan stopped getting attached. She originally wanted to fight in the front line, however, her temper was not good at all. At that time, it was very easy for her to get arrogant. Moreover, the death of her husband and master had a huge impact on her. Therefore, the Battle God Battalion decided to make her an instructor. Chen Yan knew that she could not continue living that way. Therefore, she placed all her attention on her students to help them grow and provide powerful martial artists to the Battle God Battalion. It had to be said that Chen Yan was indeed a good teacher. Her heart was there and she did not hide anything. Moreover, her status and reputation in the Battle God Battalion were very high, so the higher UPS attached great importance to her. Zhou Hao was also handed over to her by the organization. She was very satisfied with Zhou Hao, but she had never expected Zhou Hao to be so powerful. Instructor Chen, congratulations, congratulations. This disciple of yours is really impressive. In just a month, his ranking rose to 120. I'm afraid our Battle God Battalion hasn't had such a genius in 100 years. At this moment, aside from the students, even the teachers could not help but praise Zhou Hao. As the saying goes, a good master produces a good disciple. Instructor Chen, you're a legend among the instructors of the Battle God Battalion. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put Zhou Hao in your care. They all praised, but what they said was the truth. Zhou Hao's talent was indeed extraordinary. However, Chen Yan was also a legendary instructor in the Battle God Battalion. You're too kind. It's still mainly because Zhou Hao is good at learning, Chen Yan smiled and said. At this moment, everyone looked at the Heaven Tower and saw Zhou Hao walking out. As soon as he came out, Zhou Hao saw the huge crowd of students and teachers outside. He also saw Chen Yan. Zhou Hao respected this beautiful teacher very much. Instructor Chen, you're here too, Zhou Hao smiled. Hee, of course. How could I not come and take a look after you caused such a huge commotion? Not bad, Zhou Hao. You're improving very quickly. You're now ranked 117th. I believe it won't be long before you can charge into the top 100. However, the rankings are still fluctuating and there are still a few days until the end of the month. Everyone is trying to break into the rankings, so you have to work harder. If you can enter the top 100 this month, you will break the record. Chen Yan was also very excited. Don't worry, Instructor Chen, I will. Zhou Hao naturally did not relax. At this moment, many people were trying to rise up in the rankings. No one would slack off. The next morning, Zhou Hao went to hunt mutated beasts. Before he left, Zhou Hao had already seen his name drop to 123rd place. It must have been because the others were also working hard to raise their rankings last night. However, it was more interesting this way. Chris returned early in the morning. Although he saw that Zhou Hao's name had fallen to 123rd place, he was still very shocked. This Huaxia person is really impressive. Many students who returned with him were also shocked when they saw Zhou Hao's ranking. Ha ha ha, Zhou Hao is really impressive. He has really raised the reputation of our Huaxia. That's right. He's really impressive. In just a month, he has already surpassed the students who have been studying here for a year or even two. Zhou Hao's talent is too powerful. They were shocked and proud, but they also admired Zhou Hao. Although he was only a newbie who had just entered the Battle God Battalion, they still respected him. After all, strength was all that mattered. Zhou Hao's cultivation was low and his ranking was also relatively low. In the eyes of the top 100, he was nothing. However, Zhou Hao had only been here for a month and had already reached this level in a month. They were naturally shocked. In fact, it was not only shock, but also pressure. This was because many people had already been left behind by Zhou Hao. Those in the top 100 felt that they would probably be left behind as well. Therefore, they all worked extremely hard. Zhou Hao's ranking had deeply stimulated them, making them all explode with potential. Chapter 473, Bickering. The day passed quickly. At dawn, Zhou Hao returned with the students. In a day, Zhou Hao killed many more mutated beasts. It could be said that he had gained a lot. These items would be collected by the Battle God Battalion and points would be given. Zhou Hao, you've gained a lot today. Looks like the points rankings will change again. That's right, Zhou Hao. You're really impressive. Although your cultivation is only at the 2nd grade supernatural level, your combat strength is not inferior to those 5th grade supernatural experts. You're really a demon. With them all saying this, Zhou Hao felt a little embarrassed. When he returned to the Battle God Battalion, Zhou Hao was surprised to discover that his ranking had risen again, becoming 112th. There was only a difference of 12 places between this ranking and the 100th place. It seemed that he really had a chance. Zhou Hao's heart skipped a beat. In that case, he might as well enter the top 100. The students of the Battle God Battalion entered the mutated beasts area in batches. Zhou Hao entered every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On the other hand, some of the students entered every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Everyone usually rested on Sundays. They would use this time to prepare themselves. However, the end of this month happened to fall on an interesting day. It happened to be Tuesday. In other words, Zhou Hao was unable to kill the mutated beasts on Tuesday. However, the others had this opportunity. Do I have to enter the top 100 on Monday? But that's going to be difficult. Zhou Hao frowned and sighed, not thinking too much. Just a few days after the end, Zhou Hao's ranking had always fluctuated between 110 and 130. Moreover, the interesting thing was that Zhou Hao's ranking was between 110 and 120 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. However, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, his ranking was between 120 and 130. This was because Zhou Hao could only kill mutated beasts on certain days. On the days that he couldn't, other students would go and hunt. On those days, his points stayed the same but others' points would rise. This Zhou Hao sure bites hard. However, from the looks of it, he shouldn't be able to break into the top 100. After Chris returned, he analyzed the rankings with Paul and the others in the villa. That's right. Based on how much time is left, it probably won't happen. However, there's still a variable. This Zhou Hao can still challenge the Heaven Tower. Paul said worriedly. He was simply worried about this. After all, this person was too monstrous. Challenge the Heaven Tower? How is that possible? He has challenged it 4 times this month. Can he still challenge it? This Heaven Tower is special. Without breaking through his cultivation, it would be useless for him to challenge the tower. I don't believe that he broke through in just a few days. With a supernatural level cultivation, every step is already very difficult. Moreover, he has already broken through so many times in a month. I'm already starting to feel suspicious. If this continues, I will really start to wonder whether or not he's cheating. Chris shook his head in disbelief. Hopefully so. Paul sighed. Soon, it was Monday. After a day of fighting, Zhou Hao had brought back a lot of mutated beast loot. By the time he returned, his ranking had already reached 101. That's right, 101. It was only 1 place away from 100. Seeing this, Paul and the others were shocked. 101 heavens, he's really freaking impressive. I only managed to enter 100 after cultivating for 2 years. Chris could not believe it. Chris, your performance this month was also very impressive. If I'm not wrong, on the last day tomorrow, your spot will be set in between 40 and 50. Seeing that Chris was currently in the top 40, Paul heaved a sigh of relief. Chris was still stronger than Zhou Hao. In the short term, this Zhou Hao probably couldn't deal with them. You're probably right. Although I might not be able to stay in the top 40, I should be able to guarantee a spot in the top 50. Chris took a deep breath. In order to obtain such a ranking, he had been training all day without any delay. Tomorrow is the last day. Since Zhou Hao isn't able to go out and kill mutated beasts, his ranking will probably drop to 110. Tomorrow, neither Paul nor Chris would go hunting mutated beasts. Paul should have gone, but he was really not in the mood. On the other hand, Chris had been hunting mutated beasts all day long. He would also be resting tomorrow. After Zhou Hao returned to the villa, Song Kun and Luo Li were both there. The two of them also hunted mutated beasts on the same days. Zhou Hao, you're back. Hehe, you're really impressive. Back then, when we challenged Paul, we were still worried about you. Now, it seems that we were really careless. Song Kun smiled. 101. Tisk tisk, even if it's not the final ranking, it's still very impressive. I don't think it'll drop below 130. Luo Li also smiled. Zhou Hao nodded and looked at the rankings. Luo Li happened to be ranked 49th, and Song Kun was ranked 3rd. After the fluctuations tomorrow, Song Kun would definitely still be in the top 5. As for Luo Li, she would fall between 60 and 70. The fluctuations in the top 10 were very small because they needed a lot of points to rise in the rankings. Moreover, they had an absolute advantage. In other words, the points between the top 10 and the 11th place were huge. This was because most of the top 10 students had stayed here for many years. They could have graduated, but they still did not choose to. Because of this, there was a huge difference between them and the 11th place. Senior sister, your spot this time should be around 60. Brother Song, you will still be in the top 5. Compared to you, my ranking is not that impressive, Zhou Hao said with a smile. TCH, how long have you been here for? It's only been a month. Do you know what a month is like? Some people haven't adapted to life here, but you're actually starting to break into the rankings. Zhou Hao, I really wonder if you're abnormal. Luo Li looked at Zhou Hao and could not help but say. Ah? Abnormal? How am I abnormal? Zhou Hao was immediately speechless. Don't you have a life? Don't you have a lover? Why do you cultivate all day long? If I didn't know that you were human, I would have thought that you were a machine that only knew how to cultivate. Luo Li curled her lips and could not help but say. Hearing this, Zhou Hao immediately started sweating. All right, we can rest for a day tomorrow and wait for the final rankings. Song Kun smiled. He found it very interesting to watch Zhou Hao and Luo Li argue. It's the last day anyway. I can finally relax tomorrow. Luo Li also stretched her waist and vividly displayed her perfect body. They were usually very tired because of this points ranking, therefore, everyone basically rested on the first and last day of the month. Chapter 474, 91st place. After all, everyone needed to rest. If they did not rest, they would eventually collapse from exhaustion. Zhou Hao did not say anything. It was not appropriate for him to say that he still wanted to challenge the Heaven Tower tomorrow. If word got out, they would definitely be shocked. Therefore, Zhou Hao planned to act first before telling anyone. The next day was Tuesday. Zhou Hao was in the base and did not go anywhere. His ranking had been fluctuating. Of course, it was falling. In just one morning, it had fallen by 4 places. In the afternoon, it fell by 7 to 8 places. It directly fell to 113. Zhou Hao had long thought of this, but he ignored it. After all, there was still a long time before midnight, so Zhou Hao did not care too much. However, today was the last day of the points rankings. Many people were paying close attention. Not only were there students from the Battle God Battalion paying attention, but there were also some organizations outside that were interested. Especially at this moment, in the few cities closest to the Battle God Battalion, several organizations were prepared to pull all-nighters to find out the results. Watch closely. Today is the last day before the Battle God Battalion tallies up the points. All of you have to widen your eyes, understand? As long as there are any changes to the rankings, it has to be updated, understand? Every time at the end, a dark horse will appear for sure. Therefore, everyone, you have to widen your eyes. The leader hurriedly said. This situation was not just limited to a single organization. There were many similar organizations. By the way, pay attention to this newbie called Zhou Hao, understand? It was not only them. Even Su Ling was extremely nervous. She was constantly paying attention to Zhou Hao's ranking. Other than her, Su Chong and Long Aotian were also paying attention. Damn, this Zhou Hao is too freaking powerful. It's only been a month and he's already caused such a big commotion. Isn't his strength too ridiculous? Oh no, I've offended him before. By the time he comes out from the Battle God Battalion, he would at least be able to become a chief inspector in the Green Cloud Division. Not only that, the large organizations will definitely fight to snatch him. Su Chong looked at the rankings and sat on the sofa. The red wine in his hand was no longer fragrant. Long Aotian was even uglier. He was someone who even tried to attack Zhou Hao. Damn it, damn it, damn it. This Zhou Hao deserves to die. Can't he just be a good-for-nothing? Why does he have to make such a big commotion? Great, the Su family will definitely pay attention to this. Even that senior from the Su family will pay attention. Most importantly, that bastard Zhu Zhao is supporting Zhou Hao. I suspect that he's the one who got Zhou Hao into the Battle God Battalion. Long Aotian was not stupid. On the contrary, he was very good at judging the situation. It had to be known that the Battle God Battalion was an organization that was extremely difficult to enter. Ordinary geniuses were unable to enter at all. Some family geniuses might not even dare to enter. After all, everyone knew how strict the Battle God Battalion was. Zhou Hao did not have a good background. Thus, someone else must have helped him enter. This person was most likely Zhu Zhao. Although the Su family had agreed to his marriage with Su Ling, it had not been decided after all. Now that Zhou Hao's reputation had soared, it was not a good thing for him. If this continues, Zhou Hao will sooner or later be valued by the Su family. No, I have to hurry up and marry Su Ling. As Long Aotian was feeling anxious, Zhou Hao had already arrived at the Heaven Tower. He came alone and did not attract anyone's attention. Today was the last day. Everyone was either resting or paying attention to their rankings. In any case, very few people noticed Zhou Hao. However, there were also a handful of people who had just come out of the Heaven Tower and were prepared to break through at the last moment. Many people also saw Zhou Hao arrive and were very shocked. Isn't this person Zhou Hao? Why, does he still want to challenge the Heaven Tower? Is he serious? He still wants to challenge the tower? Isn't he courting death? Heavens, I really can't imagine what this Zhou Hao is trying to do. As they were shocked, Zhou Hao had already entered. Student Zhou Hao, state your desired level of challenge. The system's cold voice sounded. 0.2. Zhou Hao said directly. With this range, he should be able to enter the top 100. With 0.2, he could shake off at least 30 people. His ranking was currently between 120 and 130. If he could obtain this 0.2, he would be ranked in the top 90. That's enough. If I go overboard, I'm afraid people will suspect me. After Zhou Hao smiled, he directly began the challenge. Student Zhou Hao has accepted the challenge for 2 points. Kill 200 Grandmaster level mutated beasts in 10 minutes. Chapter 475, Report. Seeing this ranking, everyone was stunned. Their eyes widened as they looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. They revealed shocked expressions. Top 100. In just a month. What the heck was this? Immediately, everyone knew about Zhou Hao's new ranking. The originally silent rankings immediately exploded because of Zhou Hao's fluctuations. Everyone stared at this spot and were extremely shocked. Paul also learned of this news. How is this possible? Chris stood up in surprise and stared at the screen. As he looked at the rankings, his head buzzed. Paul was even more so. What did it mean for Zhou Hao to enter the top 100 in a month? This meant that Zhou Hao had limitless potential and would be targeted by many organizations. They would spare no effort to reel Zhou Hao in. In fact, Zhou Hao's current value was comparable to the top 50. This was not an exaggeration. A martial artist who could reach the top 100 of the rankings in a month was very popular for the various organizations. This was because they had seen how much potential Zhou Hao had. It was even possible for him to get into the top 5. This is really unbelievable. How is this possible? Paul was also shocked and panicked. Other people did not have any grudges with Zhou Hao, but he did. Because of that 10 billion, he had completely formed a grudge with Zhou Hao. Since Zhou Hao was doing so well now, it also meant that his life was in danger. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Zhou Hao must have cheated. I must report him. Chris could not stand it either. Even he felt pressured. That's right. He must have cheated. He must have cheated. Paul immediately nodded. He also did not believe that Zhou Hao was actually able to succeed. Guessing that he didn't go to challenge the Heaven Tower at all. He must have fought with others. If he let others deliberately lose points to him, he would be able to enter the top 100. That must be the case. Today is Tuesday. He's unable to hunt mutated beasts at all. This is the only way for him to obtain points. That must be the case. I'll report him now. At this moment, Chris was already stunned. Without saying a word, he took out his communication device and called the inspection department of the Battle God Battalion. After the call was connected, Chris immediately said, I want to report. Hello, Student Chris. What do you want to report? On the other end of the phone was an artificial customer service. I want to report Zhou Hao. He's accumulating points in an improper way. Chris ignored everything and immediately accused Zhou Hao. On the other end of the phone, the customer service lady pondered for a moment and said, Sorry, Student Chris, we've already checked. Zhou Hao did not cheat. He didn't cheat? Then how could he increase his points? Don't tell me he succeeded in passing the Heaven Tower challenge. I don't believe it. For so many years, how many people have successfully challenged the Heaven Tower 4 to 5 times a month? He has to be hiding something. At this moment, Chris shouted. The customer service lady sighed and said, as for why student Zhou Hao was able to succeed in the challenge, we don't know. However, we have already verified that what you said is false. Therefore, your report is not valid. Sorry. Do. The artificial customer service lady immediately hung up. Chris sat on the sofa, his head buzzing. How is this possible? Even now, Chris still did not believe that Zhou Hao could do this. This was simply nonsense. Chris was already starting to become afraid. After a long time, he took a deep breath and looked at Paul. Paul, from today onwards, we better take a detour when we see Zhou Hao. After Chris finished speaking, he wondered what Paul meant by that. To enter the top 100 in a month, it was simply too freaking terrifying. At the same time, everyone in front of the points rankings was shocked. Zhou Hao's name will definitely be known by the higher UPS. That's right. Zhou Hao shocked everyone with a single feat. He's definitely going to be rich now. There are only 3 people in our Battle God battalion who reached the top 100 in the first month. Moreover, the last time something like this happened, it was 20 years ago. But it's different this time. Zhou Hao has a first-grade supernatural cultivation. As they were shocked, the intelligence organizations outside also exploded. Damn, quick, call my family and tell the organization. No, I'll call them myself. Zhou Hao is impressive. He's already at this level at such a young age. Quick, contact the boss. Call me, call the army. Be it big families, individual organizations, or even national organizations, they were all shocked by the news. Zhou Hao was only a first-grade supernatural expert. In the cultivation world, he was basically a young man who had just entered adulthood, could not be considered a complete adult. However, at this moment, he had entered the top 100 in a month. This situation was really shocking. However, Su Ling did not know about this immediately. Originally, she wanted to keep paying attention. However, just as she was paying attention, her sisters suddenly showed up. They were naturally also beauties. Su Ling originally wanted to pay attention to the rankings of the Battle God battalion, but seeing that they had arrived, she could not continue watching and could only sigh. Second sister, what are you doing? Are you still thinking about your Zhou Hao? The woman in the revealing skirt covered her mouth and chuckled. Big sister, don't tease second sister. Of course she's thinking about Mr. Zhou Hao. Another petite and cute woman also chuckled. Can you guys not tease me as soon as you arrive? It's already so late. Why would you guys come over? Su Ling couldn't help but smile and feel happy when she saw them. We were just bored. Oh, right, second sister, let me tell you. That young Master Long who is trying to pursue you isn't slacking off at all. He's been pestering me. Sigh, I'm also tired of dealing with him. The long-legged beauty said gloomily. Big sister, just reject him next time. All second sister can think about now is Mr. Zhou Hao. What long Aotian? It's all for nothing. The cute woman couldn't help but snicker. On the other hand, Su Ling was very annoyed when she heard this. This long Aotian was really pervasive. He even started pestering her sister. It was simply too much. Big sister, ignore Long Aotian when he looks for you in the future. Su Ling immediately said. How would I dare to? It's not like you don't know he's the young master of the Long family. Our family's project is still dependent on the Long family. Therefore, I can only comply on the surface without actually helping him out. Sai, the long-legged beauty, was also very helpless, making Su Ling somewhat embarrassed. At this moment, Su Ling's communication device rang. She looked and frowned. It was Su Chong. Chapter 476, This is the Family. Su Ling looked at her cousin's phone with an unhappy expression. Aside from trying to set her up with young Master Long, this person was always thinking of ways to create opportunities for young Master Long. Now that the other party was calling her, Su Ling wondered what was going on. However, she still picked it up. After all, she couldn't just not pick up. "Cousin, are you looking for me?" Su Ling picked up the phone and immediately said. "Sister, let me tell you a huge piece of good news. Good news that will definitely make you so excited that you won't be able to sleep," Su Chong said excitedly. Su Ling frowned and could not help but say, "Cousin, is this good news for you or me?" When Su Ling heard Su Chang's words, she became a little worried. She was worried that Long Aotian had gone to make a proposal and that their Su family had agreed to their marriage. If that was the case, then she would be done for. "Sister, of course it's for you. How could it be for me?" Su Chong naturally could tell that his sister was being sarcastic. Because he kept creating opportunities for young Master Long for no reason, Su Ling was very dissatisfied with him. Although he did not say it, Su Chong was not stupid and could naturally tell. Hearing his sister's sarcastic words, he could only smile awkwardly and not say anything else. "Is that so? Then cousin, you have to tell me what the good news is. I'm all ears." Of course, Su Ling did not have anything good to say to this cousin. Su Chong was not angry and immediately said, "It's Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao, my sister. Do you know that he has already entered the top 100 of the Battle God Battalion?" Su Ling was stunned for a moment and did not react for a moment when she heard this news. Although she had heard Zhou Hao mention that he wanted to enter the top 100 before, it was still not easy to enter the top 100. Although Zhou Hao was challenging the Heaven Tower again today, she had never expected Zhou Hao to succeed. It was not because she did not trust Zhou Hao. It was simply because it was too difficult. To be able to break through after challenging 4 to 5 times a month, he was simply inhuman. Although it was not good for Su Ling to think this way, Su Ling was also a martial artist and knew how difficult it was. A single breakthrough required a lot of effort and luck. Successfully challenging the Heaven Tower 5 times a month was simply too shocking. Top 100? He got in. Su Ling took a deep breath and pretended to be calm. "Of course. Sister, he got into the top 100 in just 1 month. In fact, all the various divisions and organizations are all paying close attention to Zhou Hao at this moment. What I can confirm is that many people are talking about Zhou Hao. He's really famous now," Su Chong said excitedly, but Su Ling did not seem excited. "What's wrong, sister? Aren't you excited? Why are you so calm?" Su Chong could not help but ask. "Understand. I believe you. After all, he has the strength." Su Ling smiled. She was naturally excited. It was just that she didn't intend on sharing her excitement with Su Chong. "Haha, sister, you don't know, but our Su family is currently discussing this Zhou Hao. Not only did our family agree, but even Grandpa and the others agreed. The closer the two of you are, the better. In fact, no one is objecting to the two of you being together now." Hearing this, Su Ling sighed, feeling a little sad. Although she should be happy, her heart was really heavy at this moment. This was because she knew that this was a family that only cared about benefits. Now that Zhou Hao had been valued by the Su family, there was a possibility for the two of them. However, what if Zhou Hao did not do this? Her family would probably still send her into Long Aotian's arms. She felt sorry for Zhou Hao and was even more worried. This was because she had seen how much Zhou Hao had sacrificed to achieve this. "Sister, you should know what I mean now, right? Grandpa wants the two of you to progress faster, understand? If you can get married, it won't be a problem." I estimate that after Zhou Hao returns from the Battle God Battalion, he will at least be an elder of the Green Cloud Division. In fact, he can even enter the country's military organization. If he enters, things will really be different. In fact, it would be even more perfect if he stayed in the Battle God Battalion. Su Chong was very excited. Of course, he was only excited on the surface. He was still very afraid. The reason why he called was because he wanted to convey his intentions through Su Ling. After all, he had attacked Zhou Hao before. If Zhou Hao took revenge on him now, he would be helpless. Therefore, this was the reason why he called Su Ling tonight. After all, he felt that saying Zhou Hao name would only dirty his mouth. This you don't have to worry. Su Ling frowned. Seeing her family's attitude, she was really somewhat annoyed. Hee, sister, are you very happy to hear this news? Su Chong coughed dryly, sensing the dissatisfaction in his sister's voice. However, so what if she was dissatisfied? She still had to endure it. All right, Su Ling said directly. You're really calm. Sister, you have to seize this opportunity, understand? All right, I won't talk to you anymore. I'm hanging up. After Su Chong finished speaking, he hung up. Su Ling looked at the hung-up phone and sighed. Her heart ached even more for Zhou Hao. Moreover, what made her uncomfortable was her family's attitude. Originally, no one agreed to her being together with Zhou Hao. Although her family did not specifically oppose it, she still knew the attitude they had. Otherwise, they would not have sent Long Aotian to get close to her. But now, she no longer needed to worry about this. Her family would help her resolve this matter. However, there was something else she was worried about. If her family could be so anxious to get her to establish a relationship with Zhou Hao because of what happened, then would they also make her get together with others for the same reason in the future? However, this was what she was worried about. If her family could make her anxious to establish a relationship with him because of Zhou Hao, then would they also have a chance to make her like this with others one day? Sigh. Su Ling sighed and was very depressed. However, although she was depressed, she was still happy for Zhou Hao. At the same time, the situation at Zhou Hao's side was even more impressive. This was because after the fluctuations of this ranking, many people who had good relationships with Zhou Hao were crowded outside the Heaven Tower to congratulate him. Zhou Hao became embarrassed. He did not expect to attract so many onlookers after his breakthrough. He could only say a few perfunctory words and hurriedly returned to the villa. Chapter 477, Reality. Zhou Hao was not only shocked by these people congratulating him, but he was also shocked by being scouted by all these people. When Zhou Hao came out, he had already received more invitations. The offers even made him extremely tempted. Many families directly offered him 5 billion a year, and some even offered him 10 billion. Zhou Hao was shocked. 10 billion was really ridiculously high. This was already comparable to some Heaven Realm experts. Zhou Hao sighed and decided not to think about this matter. Instead, he looked at his points and smiled in his heart. This ranking was also suitable for him now. If he improved even a little more, it would really be too shocking. As Zhou Hao was lying in bed, he suddenly received a message. He was stunned for a moment and took out his phone to see that it was Su Ling. Looks like she also found out about the news. Zhou Hao hurriedly sat up and opened the communication channel. Su Ling's picture appeared in Zhou Hao's room. Miss Su, could it be that you heard of some shocking news? After all, why else would you not be sleeping so late at night? Zhou Hao said smugly. Humph, look at how smug you are. If I were in front of you, I would definitely kick you. Su Ling immediately covered her mouth and smiled when she saw Zhou Hao. Hey, why would you kick me? I didn't make any mistakes. Zhou Hao immediately said, many people should know my ranking by now, right? Su Ling nodded. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. Do you know who just called to congratulate me and told me about this? After Su Ling finished speaking, Zhou Hao was stunned for a moment, but he still guessed it. It should be my good brother-in-law, right? Pfft. Hearing this, Su Ling was amused. You sure know how to put on a show. When did I say that I wanted to be with you? Humph. Su Ling's face was red as she thought to herself that Zhou Hao was really too easygoing. This guy even called the other party his brother-in-law. If he saw her parents, would he refer to them as his parents as well? What did my brother-in-law say? Zhou Hao said indifferently. What else can he say? Of course he called to congratulate. Also, our family also knows about this and wants me to get close to you. Su Ling sighed. Zhou Hao naturally understood what she meant and felt somewhat embarrassed. Su Ling, don't worry. The reason why I did this is so that we could be together. As for others, you don't have to care at all. They don't matter. After Zhou Hao finished speaking, Su Ling looked at Zhou Hao gratefully. Of course I know what you mean. It's just that this family really makes me too sad. How could they be like this? Su Ling said unhappily. Haha, all big families are like this. After all, you're the beloved daughter of the Su family. They naturally have to protect you well. This was all that Zhou Hao could say. After all, he couldn't exactly just go along with Su Ling and mock the Su family. What could he gain from that? Since the Su family had this intention now, he only needed to go along with the flow. In any case, Zhou Hao only wanted to be with Su Ling. He did not care about anything else. Is that called protection? Humph, that's called benefit seeking. Su Ling immediately snorted and was very dissatisfied. Zhou Hao did not know how to console her and could only smile. All right, don't be angry. It's useless to think so much. In any case, I already said that I would marry you and make the Su family acknowledge me. Now that I've already taken the first step, your Su family should be quite satisfied with me, right? Zhou Hao smiled and said. Yes, indeed. I heard from my cousin that many people in the family are talking about you. The higher UPS admire you very much, even my grandfather. Su Ling did not lie to Zhou Hao, and there was nothing to lie about. Sigh, all right, I'll accept it then. Zhou Hao also sighed. He really did not like the Su family's attitude. It was mainly because their behaviors were too ugly. At the same time, Chris and Paul's expressions were also very ugly. Paul's family and Chris's family were allies. Otherwise, Chris wouldn't have taken care of Paul like this. At this moment, Chris's mother sent a video call to Chris. Chris, the news about Zhou Hao has spread to the alliance. Chris's mother, Romaine, looked at her precious son and said. I know. This matter has become very big now. Mom, what did the alliance say? Chris and Paul looked at the camera and said worriedly. The situation is not very optimistic. In fact, someone in the alliance even wants to implicate you. Romaine hurriedly said. What? Auntie, what does this mean? What does it have to do with us? Paul hurriedly said. Paul, don't be anxious. I'm also suppressing this matter. Back then, when Zhou Hao joined the Battle God Battalion, the family was about to recruit him. However, at that time, he refused everyone's recruitment. After that, you guys also did not do what the families asked you to. However, that's in the past. Now, no one really cared about that. But now the situation is different now. Someone has dug up this matter. Hearing this, Paul and Chris's expressions immediately turned ugly. When Zhou Hao had just joined the Battle God Battalion, the Alliance had indeed issued them a mission to recruit Zhou Hao. However, at that time, the two of them had some conflict with Zhou Hao, so they ignored the mission. Of course, it was mainly because Zhou Hao had rejected everyone. Since the two of them also felt that there was not much hope, they never did anything. Therefore, there are people who are trying to use this matter to blame you guys, especially Paul. Paul, you have a direct conflict with Joe Hao, and your family is under even more pressure. Hearing this, Paul almost shut up on the spot. This matter was indeed related to him. However, was this really necessary? Paul and Chris's expressions were extremely ugly. They were the geniuses of the alliance and the future successor candidates of their family. At present, the chances of the two of them becoming the successors of their families were very high. After all, among the younger generation, they were the strongest and had a huge advantage. However, some people took advantage of Joe Hao's matter to implicate the two of them. Their intentions were self-evident. Humph, I'm the future successor of the family. Many people are dissatisfied with this and want to take my place. Looks like they're going to make a big deal out of this. Chris said angrily. Romain also said, although they have the intention, they don't have the ability. Son, don't worry, I'll help you deal with this matter. Chapter 478, Bold. Romain was still confident in her son. Son, although you're young, you can already hold your own now. You're very extraordinary. Moreover, you're busy with the rankings. You're in the top 40, so your status is naturally higher than that of Joe Hao. Of course, you're also better than the competitors from the other families. As long as you graduate from the Battle God Battalion safely, you will still represent our family in the alliance. Romain smiled. Understand, Mom? Don't worry. After hanging up the phone, Chris and Paul were not in a good mood. The next morning, after what happened yesterday, things were still very explosive today. Joe Hao had long gone to Chen Yan's place to learn saber techniques. At this moment, there were also a few other students hanging around Joe Hao. There were both men and women, as well as 2 to 3 white women. Hi, Joe Hao, you were really impressive yesterday. In just a month, you entered the top 100. It's been half a year, but I'm still in the 170th place. The person who spoke was a tall white woman. She was very beautiful with exquisite facial features and a devilish figure. Western women had larger bones than Eastern women. In other words, they were tall. Moreover, their muscle tissue was also more developed than that of Easterners, so they looked more three-dimensional and sexier. At this moment, this Western woman looked at Joe Hao and sized him up, her eyes filled with worship. Yo, Jenny, what are you doing? Are you going to throw yourself at Joe Hao? Hee, what a pair of beauty and hero. Another white woman couldn't help but say. So what? I just want to date Joe Hao. So what if I throw myself at him? It's fine even if I marry him. It's fine as long as Joe Hao likes it. Western women had always been more bolder than Eastern women. They were more open and were very casual in that aspect. When Jenny said this, she was not shy at all. Instead, she gave off a very carefree feeling. This made Joe Hao feel embarrassed. He was still relatively conservative deep down. Hearing this, he was naturally somewhat embarrassed. Did you hear that, Joe Hao? Be bold. Perhaps your children will be born next year. The two of you are geniuses. If you give birth to a mixed blood, your offspring will definitely be gifted. All the best. The white woman beside him was even more fearless, making Joe Hao even more embarrassed. At this moment, Chen Yan arrived. With her around, they did not dare to say anything. Joe Hao, you were really impressive yesterday. Not bad, not bad. You're growing very quickly. I definitely think that you can even break into the top 80 in the next month. Chen Yan could not help but say when she saw Joe Hao. TL work hard, Instructor Chen. Joe Hao immediately said. Chen Yan looked at Joe Hao in satisfaction. Chen Yan spent the entire morning teaching. When it ended, Jenny even wanted to ask Joe Hao out to hang out. Of course, Joe Hao refused. He did not want to let Su Ling down. Just as he was thinking of a way to refuse, Chen Yan stopped Joe Hao. Zhou Hao, there's something I want to tell you. Come to my office. Hearing this, Zhou Hao heaved a sigh of relief. Jenny left in disappointment. When Zhou Hao and Chen Yan returned to the office, Chen Yan also went straight to the point. Zhou Hao, I know your situation very well. Although you're not a descendant of a large family, your talent is shocking. Your future accomplishments will definitely be limitless. Zhou Hao did not know what Chen Yan wanted to say, but he still nodded. Instructor Chen, why are you telling me this? Don't have any ulterior motives, so don't be nervous. I just want to tell you that you're already a famous person. Many organizations and families even want to scout you, Chen Yan said immediately. Oh? Instructor Chen, you must have something you want to tell me. Tell me, I'm listening. Zhou Hao knew that Chen Yan would not call him over for no reason. There must be a reason. After saying this, Chen Yan immediately smiled. You're really smart. To be honest, I just want to congratulate you. You're currently in high demand, but I still just wanted to advise you to be careful when choosing, Chen Yan said. Instructor Chen, who do you think I should choose? Of course, I don't want to make a choice right now, but I still have to choose one day. Therefore, I want to hear your opinion, Zhou Hao said truthfully. Chen Yan had an extraordinary status and knew many organizations. Do you want to hear the truth? Chen Yan asked immediately. Of course, instructor. Just say what you want. Zhou Hao smiled. I have two recommendations. One is the military, and the other is the Battle God Battalion. Zhou Hao was not surprised when Chen Yan mentioned these two places. He had long guessed it. Be it the military or the Battle God Battalion, they were also Zhou Hao's choices. I think you should know about the military from your senior brother Qian Sun. The salary offered by the military is usually very high and the treatment is very good. It's also a popular choice. However, I feel that it's not suitable for you. Zhou Hao was stunned for a moment before asking, why? Hehe, I haven't interacted with you for long and know that you're a smart little guy. You do have intelligence, but I'm afraid you don't like scheming. Of course, you will do well no matter where you go. However, the military is a place of scheming. I don't think it's a place you will like very much. Am I right? Chen Yan's words made Zhou Hao nod. Although Zhou Hao had fooled everyone in the Red Cliff Abyss, he still did not like that feeling. Moreover, the military can be more limiting. After all, they have their military order. Therefore, I still suggest you to join the Battle God Battalion. Zhou Hao nodded at Chen Yan's words. There are a few reasons for this. Firstly, with your current situation, the Battle God Battalion won't let you leave easily. You have to understand this, understand. Of course, Zhou Hao knew what Chen Yan meant. Anyone who was trained by an organization would naturally not be able to leave easily. Zhou Hao could understand very well. After all, the Battle God Battalion had signed a contract with the various divisions and organizations that allowed the students to be able to leave freely. They had the freedom to leave if they wanted to. However, that freedom was still not absolute. Just like Zhou Hao's current limitless potential, the Battle God Battalion really did not like letting him go. Secondly, the resources of the Battle God Battalion are definitely the best in the world. Chapter 479, Battle God's Intent. After Chen Yan finished speaking, Zhou Hao nodded. The Battle God Battalion was a national organization, so they naturally had the best resources. The Battle God Battalion is an international organization. Perhaps you don't know much about the origins of the Battle God Battalion, but I can tell you that there are two people who started the Battle God Battalion. Both of them are the battle gods of the East. As for why they started it with the Western countries, it's because they wanted all the humans to fight the mutated beasts together. As for our Huaxia, we have ancient ruins. The things inside are very extraordinary, and these things can only be accessed by the Battle God Battalion. Also, Only our Huaxia people can access them. The ancient ruins have always been in the hands of our battle god battalion. This is why so many organizations fear Huaxia. Not only is there superior martial strength in Huaxia, but there are also better resources and technology in Huaxia. Zhou Hao really did not know what Chen Yan was talking about. He had never heard of the battle god battalion before. TM only telling you this to help you analyze the situation. However, the final decision is still in your hands. Recently, I believe that the higher UPS of the battle god battalion will also talk to you soon, Chen Yan said with a smile. At the same time, in a huge virtual meeting room, there were countless screens. There were 6 chairs under the screen. These 6 chairs were forged very luxuriously. Although it was unknown what materials it was made out of, they emitted a powerful fluctuation. The 2 chairs in the center were incomparably huge. The other 4 chairs were relatively small and were placed on both sides. There were currently only 4 people sitting on these 6 chairs. This was a meeting between the higher UPS of the Battle God Battalion. It was the Battle God Conference. Among the 4 of them, there were 2 Chinese, 1 black, and 1 white. After they sat there, some information began to appear on the screen. If Zhou Hao were here, he would definitely be shocked because the information here was all his. Everyone, this is all of Zhou Hao's information. It can be seen that Zhou Hao is a genius with a poor family background. The person who spoke was Chinese. He looked at Zhou Hao on the screen with pride. With a first-grade supernatural cultivation, he is able to unleash a 5th-grade supernatural combat strength. His cultivation technique is very special and can increase his combat strength. His mental strength is also very powerful, and his movement technique is also extraordinary. In just a month, he was ranked in the top 100. Not only that, but he also obtained 2 points from the Heaven Tower. This result has only appeared a few times in our Battle God Battalion. Therefore, I think this Zhou Hao is a true genius. After the Huaxia man finished speaking, the white man nodded. That's true. This Zhou Hao is really a genius. Be it the number of mutated beasts he killed, his combat strength, or the level of his assessment, or even his background, there's nothing to complain about. The white man smiled and said, but he could not help but say. However, Battle Kingan, the condition you gave is really too high. This is going to make those Heaven Realm experts somewhat envious. The white man was somewhat dissatisfied. Lawmire, you're wrong. I don't think this offer is high at all. The person called Battle Kingan smiled and shook his head. I agree for Zhou Hao to join the Battle God Battalion's Special Forces, but this treatment is indeed, the black man also said. Another Huaxia person frowned and could not help but say, the 2 of you, this isn't much at all. After all, the more resources we give him, the higher the rewards will be. I'm certain that with Zhou Hao's talent, he definitely has the ability to enter the Saint Realm. At this point, the black and white man took a deep breath and was somewhat tempted. Although they were tempted, they were still a little unwilling. Since the 2 battle gods did not give us their opinion on this matter, we can only go through a preliminary verification and discussion. In the end, the decision was still given to the 2 battle gods. Therefore, since we disagree on this matter, we will just wait for their opinion. Battle Kingan said directly. When the black and white man heard this, they looked at each other and could not help but say, are the 2 battle gods also involved in this matter? They are already very busy, why? You're wrong. Although they are busy, they still value geniuses the most. Therefore, since we can't decide, we'll let the battle gods decide. Battle Kingan immediately said. At this moment, the white man could not help but say unhappily, but this doesn't conform to the rules. We were supposed to verify this matter before handing it to the battle gods. Battle Kingan, did you directly report this to the battle gods? This is against our rules. Haha, Lawmire, you're wrong again. I really didn't report this matter. Zhou Hao's matter has simply caused an uproar. Do you think the battle gods don't know? Battle Kingen smiled. At this moment, a message was transmitted to the meeting room. A shadow directly appeared on the big screen. Seeing this shadow, the few of them were stunned. It's the intelligent entity of the Lord God of War. The intelligent entity must have something to say. Otherwise, it wouldn't have entered the meeting room at this moment. The few of them immediately stood up with respectful expressions. This intelligent entity represented the battle gods. They did not dare to be disrespectful at all. Sirs, this is the battle gods' decision for the Zhou matter. Take a look. On the screen, a huge document appeared. All the contents of this document had already been mentioned in their discussion today. Naturally, they were not interested in looking at this. Instead, they wanted to look at the final comments. There was only one word. Agreed. The battle gods have made their decision. Do any of you have any objections? The intelligent entity's hollow voice continued to ask. Hearing this, Battle Kingen immediately smiled. Of course not. The other Huaxia Battle King also nodded. No. The black and white man below him could only sigh. Neither do we. Since there's no objections, make the arrangements. The battle gods said that this matter will be completely arranged by Battle Kingen, the intelligent entity said. Battle Kingen nodded. Don't worry, I'll do as senior battle god says. With that said, the intelligent entity disappeared. They also heaved a sigh of relief. The black and white people still felt that this offer was a little high, but since the battle gods had agreed, they naturally could not say anything. Lamire, don't worry. The reason why the battle gods did this is because they want to nurture martial artists with extraordinary talent. Although our human race's combat strength is very high now, there are very few peak-level martial artists. If there are such geniuses in the West, the battle gods also won't be stingy with them. Battle Kingen smiled. However, Lamire and the black man could only sigh. Chapter 480, Summoning. In the Battle God Battalion, Chen Yan went for a run after showering and eating breakfast. This habit was something she had picked up when she was young. Although running would not have any physical effect on a martial artist like her at all, her master had told her that simple running usually did not train the body, but the spirit. It helped her train a persevering spirit. Sometimes, mental strength was even more important than talent. Therefore, for so many years, Chen Yan had always insisted on this habit. Her favorite time of the day was also when she went for a run after eating breakfast. However, at this moment, her communication device rang. She hurriedly picked it up and was stunned for a moment. It's Battle Kingen. Chen Yan immediately revealed a respectful expression and hurriedly connected to the communication device. Battle Kingen, hello. Chen Yan, arrange for Zhou Hao to be brought here immediately. Battle Kingen did not waste his breath and said simply. Understood. Chen Yan immediately became excited after hearing this. This Battle King An's authority was not small. Clearly, the treatment they were giving Zhou Hao was very, very high. After hanging up the phone, Chen Yan smiled. The higher UPS have indeed noticed Zhou Hao. With so many organizations wanting to rope Zhou Hao in, the Battle God Battalion naturally won't just do nothing. After all, it's been many years since there was a genius that could enter the top 100 in a month. There aren't many such legendary figures in the entire Battle God Battalion. Zhou Hao has already become a legend. Chen Yan was not surprised that the higher UPS had noticed Zhou Hao. Instead, she felt that it was very normal. However, she was indeed surprised by the fact that Battle Kingen was personally looking for Zhou Hao. Who was this Battle Kingen? He was a big shot second only to the battle gods. Of course, it was still a little exaggerated to say that he was only inferior to the battle gods. However, he was definitely more than qualified to handle Zhou Hao's matter. Chen Yan did not hesitate and hurriedly called Zhou Hao. However, after calling a few times, Zhou Hao did not pick up, making her frown. What is this brat doing? As she spoke, she did not hesitate and directly walked towards Zhou Hao's residence. When Chen Yan arrived at the villa, Luo Li and Song Kun had just woken up. It was only 6 in the morning, and they both liked to sleep. "Where's Zhou Hao? I already called him. Why isn't he answering?" Chen Yan immediately asked when she saw Luo Li. "Instructor Chen, that student of yours should be training in the training room below early in the morning. You don't know this, but he's really a lunatic. He trains early in the morning and sleeps very late at night. If not for his martial artist body, he would have long been unable to endure it." Luo Li could not help but say. "Brother Zhou is really hard-working. He definitely deserves to be recognized. Only now do I know what it means to be a hard-working genius." Song Kun was not stingy with his praise. "Oh? Really? Hehe, even Song Kun said so. Looks like this Zhou Hao is really not bad." When Chen Yan heard this, she also smiled and walked downstairs without hesitation. Indeed, as soon as she arrived at the basement, she heard the sound of fists colliding despite the soundproofing system. Even if a gun was fired from the inside, she wouldn't be able to hear anything. Chen Yan walked over and saw that Zhou Hao was practicing. She smiled. "Zhou Hao." Chen Yan pressed the doorbell. This underground room was made of glass made of an extremely high-level material. It was very firm and soundproof. It was also very transparent. Zhou Hao heard a voice from inside and turned around. He was stunned when he saw Chen Yan. Zhou Hao did not know why Chen Yan was looking for him so early, but he still wiped his hands with a handkerchief and walked out of the training room. "Instructor Chen, why are you here so early?" Zhou Hao was covered in sweat. You sure are hard-working. You didn't even answer my calls." "I had no choice but to come personally," Chen Yan said angrily. Sorry. I didn't charge my phone last night. I'm charging it now. Sorry, teacher, why are you looking for me?" Zhou Hao hurriedly asked. "Go take a shower first. I'll wait for you on the first floor. Change into a clean set of clothes." As Chen Yan spoke, she went upstairs. Although Zhou Hao did not know what Chen Yan wanted to do, he still listened obediently and hurriedly washed up. "Sigh, this junior brother of mine is really hard-working. Looks like it won't take him more than a year to break into the top 50 or even the top 20. Compared to him, I'm simply trash." Luo Li had her arm on her waist and revealed her exquisite body. It was very tempting. "If you spend less time on dressing up and more time on cultivating, you will also be able to enter the top 50. Chen Yan immediately said bluntly. "Ah? That won't do. I still care more about my appearance. If you don't let me dress up, I definitely won't leave the house." Luo Li said directly. "Ha ha ha, Instructor Chen, you don't know that Luo Li is always looking in the mirror and buying beautiful clothes." Song Kun also said mercilessly. Luo Li was immediately furious and threw a pillow over. "Humph! What's wrong with wanting to be pretty?" Luo Li rolled her eyes at Song Kun. Seeing this, Chen Yan also smiled. Although Luo Li liked to dress up, it had to be said that her talent was very good. There were not many girls in the top 100. In fact, less than 30% of them were girls. However, Luo Li still made it to the top 100. This was enough to explain how impressive she was. At this moment, Zhou Hao walked down. Chen Yan looked at Zhou Hao. "Follow me." "Ah? Where?" Zhou Hao was stunned. "Just follow me. It's not like I'm trying to sell you to human traffickers." Chen Yan was in a good mood and could not help but joke. Zhou Hao also smiled and left the villa with Chen Yan. After arriving outside, Chen Yan said as the two of them walked. "I want to bring you to meet a big shot today." "You mean?" Zhou Hao thought of it. "It should be the higher UPS of the Battle God Battalion." "That's right, you're right. The person you will be meeting this time is Battle King An, one of the 4 battle kings of the Battle God Battalion. Chen Yan immediately spoke, shocking Zhou Hao. He knew that the higher UPS of the Battle God Battalion were actually 2 battle gods. However, most of the work was done by the 4 battle kings. It could be said that they were definitely big shots with authority. Battle King heavens, then do I need to prepare anything? Zhou Hao was a little nervous. This was not a small figure, but a big shot who could make the Battle God Battalion tremble with just a stomp of his foot. Already told you previously that the higher UPS of the Battle God Battalion want to see you. I didn't lie to you, did I? This notice was sent today. Moreover, it's even Battle Kingan. Do you understand how important this is? Chen Yan smiled and said.